Perhaps ironically, things are cooking within the realm of deep time. In this video, we have an article written about Gobekli Tepe. We have an article written about the very first times that, or at least the very first times that we can prove that humans were looking to the cosmos, looking to the skies, and keeping time itself. This is something that I do fairly regularly on the channel, and this video will be in the archaeology playlist here on the channel. So if that is something you are interested in, make sure that you check out that playlist. I try to keep some archaeological news in the on the channel here in that way. But this is a picture of the excavation site that we'll be talking about today, talking about the idea of humans keeping time way before anyone thought that they were doing so. This is a picture of probably the most famous pillar at Göbekli Tepe and how that might have projected onto the sky. What were they doing with these drawings? Why was so much effort put into carving stone at a time not only when people weren't supposed to be carving stone, but people weren't supposed to be keeping time, and people certainly were not supposed to have been hunkered down in actual settlements. One of the arguments about Göbekli Tepe is that it was kind of something like a vacation resort, that people stopped by Göbekli Tepe on their myriad wanderings around the world. I find that difficult to believe. I think that it was a permanent settlement. I think that people were living there way before people were supposed to be, quote unquote, living anywhere. And not that people didn't exist at the time of Göbekli Tepe, but apparently they were still hunter-gatherers. I do not believe that to have been the case. In an article titled, "Archaeologists Unveil a 12,000-Year-Old Structure, Possibly the World's Oldest Man-Made Calendar," from Daily Galaxy by Arezki Amiri, we get the following. A stunning discovery in southern Turkey is raising new questions about the origins of timekeeping and the early human connection to the cosmos. Beneath the soil of a site that has long captivated archaeologists, researchers have uncovered evidence of a sophisticated calendar system, that predates anything previously known by thousands of years. That is generations and generations, thousands of years. The implications of this find could force a reevaluation of early human civilization and its understanding of the natural world. So at the end of this article, I'm going to give my thoughts on exactly why this could be such a revolutionary finding. The forward in the article, we're going to skip forward a little bit. Celestial insights and the comet impact. The research team also noted that the carvings track celestial events, including the summer solstice. That is timekeeping. To recognize a summer solstice is to recognize that it happens over and over again. According to Sweatman, one of the symbols, a V worn around the neck of a bird-like figure, is tied to a constellation associated with the solstice. This also suggests that these ancient peoples had not just jewelry, but had jewelry that meant something. The jewelry they kept were artistic, were meant to mean something. They were symbolic. They were not just trinkets kept around their neck to take place to place and trade. These discoveries hint at a deep understanding of solar and lunar cycles among the people who built Göbekli Tepe, suggesting that they were keen observers of the sky. Why would they be keen observers of the sky if not to recognize that the skies meant something, that the skies could tell them something, even if only about timekeeping? But we have, obviously, stories from as near as 2,000 years ago, from stories as near as the Middle Ages even, of people thinking that the sky predicted things that were not just weather events. This knowledge is believed to have been influenced by a cataclysmic comet impact around 10,850 BC, which likely triggered a mini ice age and dramatically altered Earth's climate. As Sweatman explained, It appears the inhabitants of Göbekli Tepe were keen observers of the sky, a claim that makes sense given the dramatic changes of the world the world had just undergone. The comet strike may have sparked new religious beliefs, along with the development of early agricultural practices, as people sought ways to adapt to the colder, harsher climate conditions that followed the event, pushing back the history of astronomy. So here's something worth considering. These people, way back when, did not have a smartphone, right? They could not tell you what the weather was going to be. They had all of the time in the world that was not allotted towards finding food because they didn't have a job, right? So if they were hunter-gatherers living off of the fat of the herds as opposed to the fat of the land, they would have had ample time. So how much you kill one woolly rhinoceros and it feeds a tribe for days. All of that other time would have been allotted towards something else, trying to figure out other things. Our species is incredibly curious when we have the time to be so, when we're not waking up and rushing to work, racing home afterwards, and sitting in front of Netflix. The findings at Göbekli Tepe extend our understanding of ancient astronomical knowledge. The carvings not only track solar and lunar cycles, but also appear to represent the movements of the stars and meteor streams. These things suggest long-term habitation. You don't recognize these things and carve them into stone in a day. These require the recognition of patterns and then the long-form scribing into stone with tools that are like nothing we have today. It suggests a long-term habitation. The carvings now, one of the pillars, for example, is thought to depict the torrid meteor stream, which may have been the source of the comet that impacted Earth. This early recognition of meteor showers and cometary paths, so this also suggests that they had a spoken language to be able to transfer this knowledge. So if you weren't the one who recognized that to assume that they did not have a spoken language, the ability to transmit knowledge that way, is to assume that the person who recognized the meteor stream, the person who recognized that the meteor impacted Earth, and the person who carved that event into stone were all the same person, who also thought of the ways to carve into stone, and who also recognized that you could artistically represent these things. I think that all of those assumptions are astronomically improbable. The early recognition of meteor showers and cometary paths predates the work of Hipparchus, the Greek astronomer who, in 150 BC, documented the wobble of the Earth's axis. The implications of these findings are far-reaching. By extending our knowledge of ancient astronomy thousands of years before the Greeks, the site challenges long-standing assumptions about the development of human understanding of the cosmos. The advanced astronomical techniques revealed at Göbekli Tepe may indicate that the site's builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics long before the rise of writing or organized agriculture. The significance of Göbekli Tepe, we're going to go forward a little bit in the article. The study suggests that the careful tracking of celestial events at Göbekli Tepe represents an early step in the development of writing and symbolic language. How do we know that this was an early development? Do we suggest that the people who built Göbekli Tepe were the first people to have writing and symbolic language? Or did they bring that to Göbekli Tepe with them? According to Sweatman, this may be the first step towards the development of writing. Very, very coincidental, if you ask me. That we found the very first developments of writing, marking a pivotal moment when humans began to intertwine the recording of time with religious practices and social development. So these are my thoughts on why this is such a monumental thing. The older and older examples of timekeeping that we find suggest to me that humans were stationary before the history books tell us. To have observed these things for long enough and been able to communicate them for long enough that someone finally decided to carve them into stone. Timekeeping suggests that the early observation of seasons being represented and not only pardon me. Timekeeping suggests the early observation of seasons being repetitious and not only needing a way to predict when things will change, predict when the winter will come, predict when the summer will be here, predict when those herds will be passing by, but also having a place to record and reference that information. There were no smartphones in Göbekli Tepe. They could not pull their iPhone out and see what the weather was going to be, see what the next season would be. Someone had to be. So if you are constantly traveling, how do you know that the summer is coming and going, and not just that you were traveling into the place? So these people didn't know how big the world was. These people didn't know how large the landmass on which they found themselves was. They would have only known that the summer came and went, that the winter came and went, that the harvest season came and went, if they were in one place long enough to observe that every 180 days, the weather gets drastically different, right? You have to be someplace a very long time to make that observation. If you are constantly chasing around herds of animals, you are not constantly in one spot to observe that the weather does not follow you. Now, obviously, probably, these people weren't traveling far enough that they would have been just keeping up with the summer. The winter comes regardless of where you are. I think that we do have to take into account and figure out what the seasons would have been like. Would the seasons have been markedly different from now, 12,000 years ago? How would these changes in season have affected these people? And one of the things that is very interesting to observe is that it was after that ice age that we start getting the idea of writing and recording things permanently pop up multiple places around the world at roughly the same time. This would not have been, so the technology of writing in stone did not travel with you. If you were a tribe from Asia journeying into Europe, you didn't take massive stone tablets and teach people there that you can do this. Probably you didn't even take the tools with which you were writing on stone with you to teach people that you could do this. Those things wouldn't make sense. If you were traveling that far, it was either because you were uprooted from where you were or you were going to trade. You don't go to trade without knowing that other people are there. You didn't load up everything that you owned and move thousands of miles, hundreds of miles, in order to go someplace without knowing that you would have the ability to make a home there. I think that these findings, Göbekli Tepe in particular, really sort of prove, I don't think suggest, I think these things prove that people have been stationary for longer than is previously thought, that people had forms of writing for longer than we previously thought, that people were observing time for longer than we previously thought. And I think that civilization itself vastly predates what we think it is, that's where we think it is, and when we think it is that civilization started. Odds are we're just finding this one place, and it's the oldest that we have found, right? The Fertile Crescent, and saying, oh no, that's it. That's where we came from. That's where civilization started. What are the odds of that? What are the odds of that, especially on a globe that had changed appearance, changed climate, changed habitability so often. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out. And if you wish to see videos like this in the future, hitting the subscribe button, stick around for more, because I will be doing this pretty often. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.